Designed entirely in Brazil by Volkswagen's subsidiary, the SP2 is still remembered today as one of the most beautiful cars ever created by the German brand, both at home and abroad. Just over 10,200 units were produced, and although it is now a highly sought after and valuable model in Brazil as well as in countries like Germany and the United States, at the time of its launch in the early 1970s, it did not achieve the success Volkswagen had expected. Its production lasted a very short time, from 1972 to 1976. But after all, why did the SP2, such a beautiful sports car with so much potential, fail to catch on in Brazil and end up selling so little? That's exactly what you're going to find out in this video. To understand the context behind the launch of the SP2, we need to go back to the late 1960s, more precisely to 1969, when the Brazilian market was experiencing a growing interest in sports cars. Most of these models were produced in a handcrafted way by small specialized companies, and the most successful of them was the homegrown Puma GT. Since 1968, the Puma had been using the chassis and the 1500 Boxer engine from the Volkswagen Carmanguia, the brand's sportier-looking coupe introduced in the early 1960s. Still, the Carmanguia never reached the same prestige as the Puma, which had become the ultimate dream car for young Brazilians at the time. Realizing the success of the Puma, and especially because it relied on Volkswagen's own mechanics, Volkswagen was convinced it could create a superior product. After all, the Puma was a simple fiberglass car built in small numbers, while the German automaker had far greater industrial capacity and technological resources than the small Brazilian company. With that in mind, and looking closely at this promising market, Volkswagen started what became known as Project X in the early 1970s. The idea was to launch an entirely new sports car to compete with the Puma, and it would become the first model ever conceived outside of the company's German headquarters. The car was based on the recently released variant, but it still carried the already outdated rear swing axle suspension. The design was led by a team under Brazilian designer Marcio Piancastelli, who years later would also create the iconic Volkswagen Brasilia. For inspiration, they looked at the Chevrolet Testudo, a prototype penned by Giorgetto Giugiaro and first shown at the Geneva Motor Show in 1963. After several tests, the prototype of VW's new sports car was unveiled at the 1971 German Industrial Fair. Described only as a study model, it quickly earned the nickname Volkssport. However, the car was not yet fully ready and would only reach dealerships a year later. In fact, in 1971, Volkswagen did not even have an official sales launch date for it. The name chosen for Volkswagen's new sports car was a simple acronym, SEP. What's curious is that to this day, there is no consensus about what those two letters actually mean. Some sources argue it was short for Special Project. Others claim it was a reference to the city of São Paulo, where the car was designed. Still others suggest variations like Sport Car, Special Performance, or even Sport Prototype. The debate remains open, but the fact is that the acronym itself became iconic. The brand new Volkswagen SP was officially presented to the public in 1972 with a grand ceremony that even featured the presence of Rudolf Leiting, then president of Volkswagen in Germany. And his presence was no coincidence. Between 1968 and 1971, Leiting had been president of Volkswagen do Brasil, closely following every stage of the sports car's creation. He was, in fact, the one who gave the green light for the project to move forward. The model reached the market in two versions: the simpler SP1, fitted with a less powerful engine, and the SP2, the top-of-the-line version with a stronger powertrain. The SP2 quickly overshadowed the SP1, becoming so well known that it eventually stood as the official name by which the car is remembered today. The sports car drew plenty of attention from the public, mainly because of its bold, modern, and aggressive styling for the standards of the time. At the front, the car featured 4 round headlights, 2 on each side, mounted in grey-painted bezels. A design cue strongly reminiscent of Volkswagen's Brazilian, TL, and variant models, part of the company's visual identity in the early 1970s. In the center of the nose sat the VW badge, flanked by 2 thin horizontal chrome strips, nicknamed Little Mustaches. The front bumper, meanwhile, had a rubber trim designed to minimize damage in minor urban collisions. At the rear, the SP2 displayed a sharply angled rear window, rectangular 2-tone taillights, and a license plate positioned right in the center, between the 2 bumper guards. A curious detail was that Volkswagen installed only one reverse light, mounted below the bumper on the left side. There was also a silver grille along the lower section, whose purpose was to conceal the muffler, with its exhaust tip exiting on the car's left side. Seen from the side, the SP2 featured air intakes on the C-pillars, something absent from the prototype shown in 1971, but later added as necessary to improve cooling, since without them the engine overheated. The car also came with lateral reflective stripes, either black or red depending on the body color, 14-inch steel wheels, and flush chrome door handles that gave it a more refined appearance. Inside, the SP2 was just as striking. The finish was high in quality. The dashboard was made of deformable plastic and came in a bold orange trim, giving the cabin a distinctive and upscale feel. In the base SP1, the instrument panel carried only a speedometer, tachometer, fuel gauge, and central clock. The SP2, however, featured a far more complete cluster, adding an ammeter and an engine temperature gauge. The steering wheel had a leather-like finish, and a radio was available as an optional extra. The contoured seats offered excellent driving position, adjustable headrests, and optionally, leather upholstery. As a true sports car, it was strictly a two-seater, with no rear bench. In addition, Volkswagen introduced several features in the SP2 that were first for the Brazilian market. 3-point seat belts, and a pantograph-style driver's side windshield wiper that increased the sweep area. The model was also the first in Brazil to feature a wiper timer, and even included rare luxuries for the era, like a passenger side reading light, an exclusive item for the top-tier SP2. When it came to luggage space, just like the variant and TL models sold in Brazil, the SP also offered two separate compartments, one in the front with a capacity of 140 liters and another in the rear holding 205 liters, together adding up to 345 liters of usable space. The mechanical setup featured the classic flat boxer engine, in which the cooling fan was directly connected to the crankshaft, the same solution already used in both the variant and the TL. Positioned just below the rear trunk, this was precisely where the main differences between the SP1 and SP2 versions appeared. The SP1 was equipped with the 1600 air-cooled engine, rated at 65 gross horsepower, or 54 net horsepower. Mated to a 4-speed manual gearbox, this entry-level version accelerated from 0 to 100 km per hour in 16.3 seconds and reached a top speed of 150 km per hour. The SP2, on the other hand, came with the larger 1700 flat boxer engine, delivering about 10 additional horsepower, 75 gross and 65 net. Also paired with a 4-speed manual transmission, it could go from 0 to 100 km per hour in 14.2 seconds and achieve a top speed of 161 km per hour, according to Volkswagen's official data. In 1972, the Brazilian magazine Quatro Rodas tested the SP2 and praised its design, safety, comfort, finish, visibility, and stability. However, it also pointed out some drawbacks. In tighter corners, the rear tended to slide, demanding more skill from the driver. Another criticism was the high engine noise inside the cabin, a common trait in Volkswagen's boxer-powered cars, along with performance considered underwhelming, even by the standards of the 1970s. In their test, the magazine recorded a top speed of 153 km per hour and 0 to 100 km per hour in 17.4 seconds, nearly 3 seconds slower than the factory's claim, despite being the supposedly more powerful SP2. According to the review, the SP2's performance wasn't much better than that of mid-sized sedans of the time, disappointing buyers who expected stronger numbers from such a sporty-looking car. The weak performance of the base model meant that the SP1 had an extremely short lifespan. Produced only between 1972 and 1973, it totaled just 88 units. Today, it is considered one of the rarest Brazilian Volkswagens ever built. Many examples ended up being converted with SP2 parts and badges, making original factory-preserved SP1s even harder to find. Throughout its production run, the SP2 received virtually no major updates, apart from the introduction of new paint colors. Even so, it never achieved the success Volkswagen hoped for, mainly due to its below-expectation performance for a sports car. To put this in perspective, even the Puma, which also relied on Volkswagen Boxer engines, delivered better acceleration figures since it was about 200 kilograms lighter thanks to its fiberglass body. The SP2, built entirely in steel, was much heavier. Another factor that hurt sales was its high price, a direct result of the lengthy production process. Body panels were stamped at Volkswagen's São Bernardo do Campo plant, then sent to Caramanguia, about 4 kilometers away, for welding and body assembly. They were then returned to Volkswagen for painting, and once again back to Caraman for final assembly. In 1972, the list price of an SP1 was 28,900 cruzeiros, the Brazilian currency at the time, while the SP2 cost 30,900 cruzeiros, For comparison, a Brazilian luxury sedan like the Chevrolet Opala Luxo sold for 28,665 cruzeiros, and a Volkswagen TL was priced around 21,795 cruzeiros. Due to weak sales, in 1976 Volkswagen decided to end production of the SP2 after building approximately 10,200 units. Out of that total, 681 cars were exported at the time to markets such as the Middle East, the Dominican Republic, and several African countries. Even Volkswagen's German headquarters acknowledged the originality and creativity of the Brazilian team behind the project. One SP2 was fully restored and sent to the company's museum in Wolfsburg, where it took its place alongside other iconic models launched around the world. Today, because of its rarity and depending on its condition and level of originality, the value of an SP2 in Brazil can reach around 200,000 reais, a little over 30,000 US dollars. So have you ever seen an SP2 out there? Let me know down in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to Torque Revealed. Here I bring you documentaries about all kinds of cars. That's it for today. Thanks for watching, take care, and see you in the next video.